Here we go. Welcome back to Brown and Browner, the post Super Bowl edition and the post football season edition.
What a way
Yep.
to end the football season.
Yep.
So disappointing.
Yep. Two things got taken. Two things got taken to the woodshed on Sunday: Drake and the Chiefs.
You're not lying about that. And I think that'd be a great song for Philly. They should have been playing that in their celebration. They not like us. They not like us.
Yep.
Because that was just an old-fashioned ass whipping. And as a fan, first off, as a Chiefs fan, it sucked. And there were, and I hope nobody's taking this the wrong way, because I have Native American friends, but it was like there were too many Indians and not enough Chiefs in that game on Sunday.
True.
There wasn't enough of leadership. There wasn't enough realization that for 2 weeks we've been going down the wrong road. How do we switch? And I'm blaming Matt Nagy for that, because I've seen him do that as a head coach with the Bears, become too enamored with the idea of I'm going to be great because I can show I can pass the ball down the field. That wasn't the right plan. You should have been running the ball against a team that has a much better pass defense than run defense.
Yep.
You should have been possessing the ball more so that you would have limited their opportunities to score like they were putting up on the team Sunday.
They abandoned every bit of everything that they played for 17 games in the season. Well, even into the playoffs. Time control, clock management, all thrown out the window by the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And you saw that from drive one. Mismanagement of downs. I mean, 3rd and long every single time.
Because you ran the ball 3 times in the first half. Who does that?
Exactly.
This isn't Madden like 1990.
No. These are not air raid offenses or anything of that sort. And like my colleague here said, you're playing against a viable secondary, arguably a hell of a secondary in the making between Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and that whole crew. Boy, they got some. You know what? Applause to Howie Roseman for assembling that squad, because he did some of the best moves in the offseason. I mean, obviously the Saquon one takes the cake, but the way that he maneuvered the draft to get those two, got some free agent pickups, Jalen Carter 2 years ago. I mean, the guy built a team to be competitive every single year for the next 3 to 4 years, if not longer, depending on the salary cap moves. If I read correctly this morning, they returned 10 of their 11 starters on offense. So, when we're talking about 25 and 26, I mean, Eagles are 1 or 2, I would think, walking in next year for predictions, if we're talking that way. And as long as they manage the cap and, continue to draft the way they do, get protection for Hurts and everything else, you might be looking at a repeat next year at this point. I know it's early to talk about that, but this is a team that's built and it's young, relatively speaking.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, they lost to Kansas City in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
Yep.
They had a weird second half of the season last year.
Yep.
When they were 10-1 to start.
Yep.
And this year they won the Super Bowl. And they won the Super Bowl, about 5 years ago?
Yep.
Is that about right?
2017, I believe. So it was a little while ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
That's some consistency that you take Kansas City out of the conversation. What other team has shown that consistency over the last, decade?
Yep. Well, and if you look at from 17, they turned over the roster a little bit going into the 2020s, if you will, as a decade. Dare I say, other than the Chiefs having won the last 2 Super Bowls and getting to this one, the Eagles could be considered in many ways a dynasty of success. Now, without only just the 1 Super Bowl and 2 appearances. But if you look at this 4-year run, they might be one of the most winningest teams behind the Chiefs, if you look at it from that perspective.
If you look at wins and losses,
yes,
definitely.
Yep.
But I think, again, and we, as much as we want to give these accolades to various teams, really at the end of the day, what's the difference between Dan Marino and Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Yeah. It's because he won 0 Super Bowls.
Exactly.
So Super Bowls are still the standard when you're talking about greatness, whether it's dynastic or HOF or whatever it is. So they're not there yet, but they're on the cusp.
They've
I
they've
think
got
that
they've got the
they're gonna
makings
get
and the build of the right kind of thing to, you know, sustain success over a period of time. And like I said, credit given to their GM. And you know, we saw the drama behind their coach as the season went on. I believe it was at 2-2. They were calling for his head, and he was
Oh
yelling at
yeah,
the crowd and all the
yeah.
other nonsense. And I
Imagine if
get
they would
that.
have done that. Yeah, so it shows you how wrong the masses can be when it comes to
Yes.
fandom, when it comes to some of these in-studio commentators. Everybody
Yep.
was on the get rid of Nick Sirianni. He was hollering at a fan, "Oh my God, he's lost his mind. He needs to go. He needs to go where?"
Well, and I as much as I give Sirianni credit, you also have to give credit to the fact that they had arguably the best offensive coordinator and the best defensive coordinator for 2024. Kellen Moore did well because he had a ton of talent, obviously, to work with walking in, right?
For
I mean,
sure.
so you got to get, you know, there's a level of proof that the players did it, but you know, offensive coordinator obviously made the right play calls, and having Saquon Barkley in the background doesn't hurt in your back
Talk about the
pocket.
best upgrade. Remember, Philly was doing this before with DeAndre Swift,
Yes.
and Greenwell was there, and they had another guy. I forget his name right now. They had a three-headed sort of running back crew, and they replaced that with Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a kid in a candy shop. Kellen Moore is like, "Oh my God, it was Christmas!" Like every day of the week for the entire NFL season.
Now, Vic Fangio.
I think he's the second best coordinator because if you look at what Spags did, the Chiefs didn't score more than 20 points, maybe 1 or 2 games all year long.
Spags did more with less. Yeah, Spags did more with less in terms of talent purely on the field. I mean, if you talk about, you know, the pure talent, that the fact that, you know, Philly had a Jalen Carter up front, they had a Sweat. I mean, you're talking about 2 bulldogs up in front. You're talking about Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Blankenship. I mean, that's a hell of a backfield.
And they're young, and they're super young. They're going to get value out of them where in both ways because they're going to be able to play on the field and impact games.
Yep.
But a couple of them are still on rookie contracts for a couple more years.
Yeah, to get them for cheap. I mean, whereas honestly with the Chiefs, you got a Chris Jones, you know, you've got a George Karlaftis, and in the backfield, you know, we've got, you know, Trent McDuffie. We don't have that all-star. We don't have that all-star one linebacker crew or anything like that. We made do with what we've got, and they did well. Obviously, they did really well.
And I have to say, I just want to know if this may come out later on. Did McDuffie and Mahomes go out and drink until like 5 a.m. or something? Because those two people played to the exact opposite of what they had played like all year long.
I give Mahomes 50% of the blame. The other blame is the fact that the man had 2 seconds to get rid of a ball because his front line was Swiss cheese. And we knew the vulnerability of the front line throughout the season because of the different rotational things that we had to do with the left tackle and all that other nonsense. But honestly, that's stuff we've got to shore up from a GM perspective in the offseason, knowing that we're going to have problems on our front line. And I get there's, you know, investments have to be made all over the place. You know, Chris Jones got to get paid. Travis Kelce's contract was restructured to make it a 2-year deal. Mahomes honestly hasn't asked for money, and he's not going to because he knows that he has to sustain protection and honestly, you're getting him at a discount. He's only like the 10th or 8th, 9th paid quarterback now because of all the, you know, all the contracts that have flown over in the last 2 years.
What he established when he got his contract as the new norm, and now everybody else is taking advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes is playing $40 million a year. You've got guys getting paid 50, 60. I believe Aaron Rodgers is close to 65.
I don't even get that stupid New York Jets stuff.
You know, so at that point, Mahomes is a bargain. Now you got to start, you know, paying the money to any other resource you got to get him. You got to get him some receivers. Travis Kelce may retire, so you're going to figure out that hole. There's a lot of plugs to be had for next season for the Chiefs. But honestly, it starts with the front line, especially when you get a quarterback like that. Case in point, Matt Stafford in Detroit never had frontline protection, got smashed all the time. In the 1 year you get him out of there, he gets his title. He gets a title because he had protection.
Well, and this is why I, again, blame Matt Nagy for a lot of what went on. Yeah. Because if you think about it, like you said, that was their Achilles heel all year long. Mahomes was just crafty enough to be able to figure it out, and that's why they had so many close games that they were pulling out. Could have gone the other way, and they could have not made the playoffs just as easily.
Agreed.
So they get to the Super Bowl, and immediately you can see that Mahomes is in trouble and he's running for his life.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of changing your game plan and start doing more draw plays, screen plays
Greens.
to stop them from rushing so hard. And remember, they're only rushing 4. They only blitz like 2 or 3 times all game long.
No.
So they only rushed in their front 4.
They blitz 0. That was the
Okay.
official count. The official count was blitz 0, sack 6. Think about that.
So what is that telling you about our coaching staff's inability to adapt to this situation? Why weren't they taking, hey, look, you didn't throw the ball to Kelsey any freaking way. Put him back there to block.
Yep.
Run the ball. You got some hard runners. I mean, Pacheco, I don't know if he's 100% healthy.
Yeah.
But Kareem, he does the job.
Kareem. Yep.
So give him the ball. 3 times in the first half. That's why you were down 24-0.
Yep. I almost run this akin like, okay, let's pretend the Bills would have won the AFC instead of the Chiefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Bills had that huge front line.
Oh, yeah. Just like Philly.
I think we would have seen a completely different game in the Super Bowl.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Again, it's about how you approach the game.
Yeah.
You had Matt Nagy drop a game plan to pass the ball like 95% of the time. How is that going to win you any games?
But part of my point is, okay, you just beat a team that protected the hell out of their quarterback in Josh Allen and, got past him. Okay, let's learn something from that because we're playing against a vaunted front line and we want to establish the line so we can get the run going, get some time, get some protection, get the ball out. No, we didn't learn a thing. And like you said, that falls on the offensive coordinator by all means.
Why did he think that Kansas City would be successful in a shootout?
Right.
Versus them being ball control
oriented. We've never scored 30.
What's that?
We haven't scored above 30 all year. So what makes you think we can try to do it now?
And did you not see what Philly just did to Washington, who actually has a pretty good offense too?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part. And I get it. The defense had held had been the story all year long. And it's the reason why Kansas City was where they were. Yep. But if you look at the defense, they were on the field 95% of the time because it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out.
Like it was impressive to the point where they were holding up the Eagles as well as they did through halftime. But after that, they were gassed. They were gassed. And the offense needed to show up to get them off the field, and they didn't, and that's why it turned into a spanking by the end of it. By third quarter, you knew it was over, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Even before that, you could just tell.
At halftime.
The language,
the body language.
Sunken shoulders and how long arms to the side. There wasn't anyone on either side of the ball that looked like they thought they could win after halftime, especially when they came down the field in that first drive and then messed up again.
Yeah, messed up again. Yep, that was the key one. And that honestly put the nail in the coffin at that point. Because you figure, okay, halftime, you're going to make adjustments. You're going to try to make this a game. And even Eagles fans that I was watching the game with were like, yeah, we're still nervous here. You can game plan and everybody else can make changes at halftime, just like he always has. Not a damn thing happened.
Yep, and I was watching it with my nephew, who's an Eagles fan, and the last time we watched the Super Bowl together, the Eagles did the same thing. If you remember a few years ago, they actually were ahead.
Statistically, they were a better team.
Figured it out and came back.
Yeah, well, and like I said, and that's where you had a dynamic offense. You had the ability to pass protect. You had a lot more things going on that were common sense versus, honestly, it's like these guys walked in the building and just expected to be handed a trophy, and there was no desire or want, honestly.
Well, that's what it looked like because you had 2 weeks.
Yep.
2 weeks. And by halftime, you basically lost the game. You had 23 yards of offense, total offense through halftime. You ran the ball 3 times. That was the game plan that you thought was going to be effective to win the biggest game of the season.
See, and that's where I get the whole 2-week rest before the championship game kind of stuff and why they do it and the media and the money and all that other garbage. But for the sake of football, I wish it was just continuous play, meaning you play your conference championship game, you play the Super Bowl, because that's what would be normal planning, normal strategy for any coaches, players, the whole 9 yards. Now you've got this elongated 2-week thing. Honestly, it messes with the mentals if you think about it, because that's exactly what happened here. It's like, oh, three-peat. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. And I think I saw a great meme the other day. It's like, oh, somewhere in, I'm going to racially say this, somewhere in Ethiopia, a poor kid's wearing a championship shirt with San Francisco, Philadelphia, and he's got a three-peat shirt, and everybody's confused.
Wait a minute, three-peats never happened. Oh, that's right. You got the shirt they made before it actually happened, and guess what? It didn't happen.
Yep.
Oh, that happens every year. That happens every year. Like you said, the San Francisco, the old Philly, everybody does it. And, you know, you then have to give them away for free because they have zero value.
Yep. No, it's like I said, this was truly a game where players, at least for the Chiefs, and I'm reading between the lines here, they didn't show up motivated enough. Because honestly, they were more hungry in years 1 and 2 when they wanted back-to-back, and even in the very first year, and even the Tampa year. But the Tampa year, they just got out-schemed. And that, again, was another one where you had the enemy and Nagy, you know, and Tampa just came out and said, you know what? We're going to embarrass you. We're going to take away your ability.
And they totally did.
Yep.
Again, that was another one of those offensively and defensively, just like the Eagles, where they dominated the game. And there was no real response from the Chiefs. And it was another one of those games where the offensive line was exposed and Mahomes was running for his life, and he could not bring up the Mahomes magic because somebody was sitting there on his tail all day long. And again, why didn't you learn from that? Why aren't you, if you had to, run the ball just 3 times straight, put in both tight ends. They didn't have a lot of the 2 tight ends the way they used to. Right. Run the ball 3 times straight. Even if you didn't get the first down, just make it look like you want to run the ball.
Look like you're going to run it. Yep, exactly. No, that's like I said.
And this is just you and I talking. We're nobodies. We're sitting on the couch watching the game. Who the hell was in Kansas City's or on Kansas City sideline? And what were they saying? Hey, by the way, when they showed Kelce come in looking like a 70s, like guy in the club in the 70s, the one guy you don't want to speak to, and he might be talking to a Russian on the side, you know, that's what he looked like. And that was a sign that they were going to freaking lose, because what is that? And then the other thing that was a damning of that Kelce thing that I saw, he was actually pouting during the game. And he was pouting early. It wasn't when the game was over. It was, you know, the middle of the second half, because he was doing diva a little bit. He wasn't getting the ball. Mahomes was throwing the ball all over the place, low, left, right. But Kelce was pouting, and I think that's the first time I've seen him really pout like that.
Agreed.
And that's a concern, because I feel Kelce. He was the man, and then this year, for some weird reason, and probably part of the reason why they didn't score as many points, they decided that he was going to be a decoy, and they didn't pass the ball to him. He scored his first touchdown in like game 15 or something like that.
There's been a lot of questions as to his current motivation and usage on the field, because he used to be that guy that kind of, and he still is that guy that free wings. Like, he doesn't run pure routes because he's told to. He improvises like crazy, and him and Mahomes are on the same page, and they've made it work for a number of years, obviously.
Right.
I feel like his ability to improv, and then more importantly, his physical ability to get free, has changed in the last 2 years. Obviously, age and everything else kicks in. I get that. But the man is a huge specimen. He's a big boy, right? So you would think he's still going to be a big target. He can become a possession tight end, which is kind of what he was this year. It's not like he was a physical force or anything. He could still be a team leader, which I think was lacking in the Super Bowl, right? Obviously, from his pouting and things like that. Like, that's where a guy comes in and tries to motivate the troops, especially as a senior leader on the team. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the commentators even said it, there just was no spark. I mean, until the fourth quarter, where Mahomes chucked up the 65-yarder up to Xavier Worthy, it was like, where was that in the first quarter?
Yeah, they didn't throw one long pass before that.
No.
And there were times that he could have thrown it. He was double clutching. He looked like a rookie QB out there who was unsure of what he was supposed to do. There were times he could have run the one pass that was third down. He threw it over P. Ryan's head.
Yes.
He had a lane to run. And the fact that he slowed down a little bit to throw the pass was why he got tackled, tripped up. He should have just run straight ahead. It was like a 5-yard gain. He would have had a first down. All of the things that he knew, I'm telling you, it was like he was not Patrick Mahomes. Like he stayed out till 5 a.m. or something with somebody else, or whatever. There's some conspiracy theories who had scripted. See Patrick Mahomes play like that. That's impossible. I don't know about that. But what I did see was this: when you talked about a spark, usually when a team is losing, a linebacker, a leader on the defensive or the offense will start yelling at people.
Steps up, exactly.
Yeah, start yelling at the front line. You guys need to block better. Mahomes was just standing on the side chewing on his mouthpiece.
Yep.
That was all. He didn't talk to nobody. He didn't do anything.
He was doing his little Invisalign bit, and that's about it, honestly.
Yeah. But how do you explain that? This is the biggest game of the season, and there isn't one person. Every time they showed a shot of the sidelines, you saw it looked like a funeral. There were people sitting there with their heads so far down.
Oh, yeah, everyone's head down.
What's going on? Are you looking at the ground?
Yeah. No, they look depressed, and that's the more concerning part I have walking into 25 of next year. Is the fact that, okay, you got obviously a lot of contracts, a lot of things up for grabs, all that stuff. But what's the motivation now? That's my bigger, it would have been one thing if we lost this game close. I mean, I get it. Okay, you're going for a three-peat, a lot of pressure on you. You lost to a great team in the Eagles, fine. But you got spanked and honestly demoralized, I think, more than anything else. So where does your motivation lie going into next season, knowing that you're going to have a lot of changes obviously coming to the team defensively and offensively? And there's going to have to be moves made at the end of the day and some cap considerations because honestly, it just wasn't there. You didn't have a difference maker on the defense other than a Chris Jones and a George Karlaftis that stepped up. That's it. And even they got
their name. Did you hear their name once last?
They got muted.
Sunday.
They got muted completely this game. I mean, even Spagnuolo, for as good as he tries to scheme and stuff like that, couldn't get the corners free to blitz. Think about that. So what does that tell you? I mean, you need a dynamic force in the linebacking core. And, we've got a Chenal and all those other guys and Tranquil, and those guys are mid-tier. They're not the elites. They're not all the other guys that are in the league that are, elite linebackers in any fashion. So maybe that's the key. Where you need a team leader in the linebacking core, you need maybe say like a murderer, like Ray, like Ray Lewis or something.
Before. We had Gay, we had who was the other guy? What happened to them?
Yeah, they left. Yeah, that's the sad part. Yep, those are key pieces.
That was a big exposure of some deficiencies on the defense, deficiencies on the offense.
Yep.
I mean, change is constant, and there should always be an expectation, even if you win, to constantly look to the future and how you can make yourself better or sustain what you have. But
now with that
I'm a little worried that Kansas City might fall off. Now, had they won the Super Bowl, this whole aura would have still been there of invincibility.
Yeah.
But this year, more so than any year they've had in the past, there's no offense. Mahomes wasn't even like the 10th best quarterback in the West or in the AFC, let alone the league. They have no real running game, nothing established. Their wide receivers, once Ray Rice comes or Rashid Rice comes back, they'll have a good receiving core, a better receiving core. But they got D-Hops, who basically was there for the ride. He didn't do shit. Worthy wasn't used effectively in many games. Kelsey's on the decline, and yes, I love the other tight end as well. But it didn't look great.
No, and perfect segue. Okay, let's look at next year. In the division, you've got Denver on the up because they're young, they're ferocious, they got a great coach, and their defense is legit. Patrick Surtain
and they got a decent quarterback.
Yep, and they got a decent quarterback. Bo
may not know, but he sort of is finding out. So Bo will know eventually.
Bo's got it going on, and then you got the Chargers, who definitely are on the come up. There's no question.
Harbaugh does that.
And young, and that's the scary part. So I think that's another team that's definitely going to be dangerous. The Raiders are always willing to spend money, do what's necessary, and you're going to have.
Stop yourself. Stop yourself. Will you? Come on, man. Come on.
I think you and I talked about this offline. They've got a three-headed. I don't even know what the best word is. A three-headed confusion. Let's call it that way. Of what's going on there. You got an OC named Chip Kelly, who's a little at times. You're bringing back the second or the 15th coming of Pete Carroll, only because he's there to spite John, the Harbaugh family.
I don't even know why he's there.
And then you got Tom Brady, who I don't know really what the stake is. I mean, he's getting money obviously out of it, but I don't know how much say he has. But you got a third factor in there that could obviously be a good opinion. So how does that all work?
I don't know, but here's a thought for you. I saw Brady throw a pass across the boulevard and he threw it to Gronk, and then he threw one to some saxophone player. What? They don't have a quarterback, right? I mean, they have some guy they picked up, but he didn't look so good.
Slot. Yeah, it's an open slot.
So who would say that maybe Brady makes a return?
I mean, as much as they say that, I don't think Tom Brady's coming back to play on a couple different counts. One, the man's getting paid $300 million to sit in a booth and talk about other players. I think he's good there. I don't know if you noticed, but the man was wearing a $900,000 watch while commentating.
There's a such thing as that?
That thing was blinging like you couldn't believe. That rose gold was shining on TV over Kevin Burkhardt. Like, it was unbelievable. When they did the pan outs to him and they did like the New Orleans background scene and the two of them are commentating, this thing just like stuck out on his wrist like, holy shit, he owns a zip code.
I missed that.
Thing has literally its own city and state.
Yeah, what's the point of going through the rigors of practice and summer and training camp just to not win and to possibly get hurt?
He's good with life. I mean, unless he had like a 100% guarantee, him, Gronk, and the crew coming back and getting the ring, they ain't doing nothing. They're done. They're sitting back. They're collecting their royalties. They're happy campers talking about the game, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think we're going to see the third coming of Brady by any means. But who do you bring in as a quarterback for the Raiders with all these different influences?
Sam Darnoldson.
Darnold could be an interesting pickup because, Sam Darnold could be interesting. Some have thought about the running joke of Aaron Rodgers.
See, what needs to happen? I mean, we joke about this, we talk about this, and I remember all the hoopla that went into, look at what the Jets are going to be, and they had them rising on the charge, being in the top 3 to win the Super Bowl, and all of this stupid stuff. Let's get Rodgers out of the league. The dude is this asshole who thinks he's the smartest guy in every room he's in. Even if he was sitting in a Mensa room, he would think that he was the smartest guy in that room, and he's not.
Did you not find it funny that even the Super Bowl's going on, everything else, the man had to come on TV at 3:00 on Sunday, or he didn't come on TV, but basically the headliner for Adam Schefter was, hey, the Jets are not going to be re-signing Aaron Rodgers. And that took up an hour.
Who cares?
Because guess what? He needed his TV time. He felt a little alone in that cave, wherever the hell he is, smoking his ayahuasca.
In the darkness, wherever he is. Yeah. But we need to stop.
Pandering.
Monster.
Pandering,
and that's what we're doing. When you go to the zoo, it has a sign. It says, don't feed the animals. They need to observe that here because they keep giving them time. It's the same with Jerry Jones. Stop feeding the animals. Don't give them any more time on TV. They're not important. So why aren't we pointing out the things that are important and using that time effectively versus talking about a has-been and someone who's on a serious way out and starting to lose his faculties? And giving these people airtime doesn't help their team. All it does is feed into the egos that we're dealing with. That's exactly what this does. So stop doing it. Aaron Rodgers is irrelevant. Stop showing him. The Jets have been irrelevant. Nobody's talked about him until Aaron Rodgers got there. And then he hurt himself. And then he came back and showed that he really isn't good at 40 years old. So let's stop it. Jerry Jones, let's stop it. Dallas hasn't been relevant for how long now?
Exactly.
So let's stop that. Let's talk about the new guys coming in the league, the rookie quarterback class, where you had so many great rookie quarterbacks. Let's talk about the transition now that we see from moving from the Kansas City dynasty to a potential Eagles dynasty. Let's talk about how great Detroit is and the potential that they have after being an 0-16 team just a decade ago. Let's talk about those things. Let's not talk about those other two people. Who cares about them?
Now, on that note, I think we end this conversation because that's the perfect way to segue into why we will talk about all the other things in football going forward and not the dramatics of the bad stuff. Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head on the key topics. Detroit, Cincinnati, all the come-ups.
Cincinnati,
the potential changes to come. It's going to get very interesting walking into next year. Like I said, Chiefs, you've now left with a ton of question marks. Eagles, are you building a little short-term dynasty here? We'll see how it goes. And, you got all these other teams that we mentioned in the AFC West that honestly could finally win the division.
Looking at the kinks in the Chiefs' armor. And don't forget, we got the person who won the MVP this year, and Josh, and he did some amazing things because a lot of us, including myself, looked at him as potentially failing this year because he had no receivers, he had nothing. What happened after James Cook got going? They looked great. He won the MVP. Lamar had a better year than he had in the other 2 years he won MVP, which people are saying, why did he didn't win the MVP?
Yep.
And he still has a lot to achieve.
Oh, yeah.
Those two teams could be the next, along with Cincinnati, that could be the next step. That could be, Chiefs might disappear, and those could be the next three teams that are going to be vying for the Super Bowl in the years.
Lamar's only 25. He won a Heisman when he was 19.
Well, and all this Josh Allen. And if he continues his ascension, and the reason I say ascension, but it's the maturity that he's shown that's led to the ascension. He's not trying to be the do-all, be-all, this and that. He's containing things, and that actually made him better. So if he continues to do that, Lamar continues to shine. Well, here's the problem with Baltimore. Baltimore still forgets that they, too, get into this, let's make Lamar look great as a passer versus let's run the ball effectively and control the game.
I'll tell you Baltimore's central problem that, unfortunately, I don't think the media gets right every year. How many offensive coordinators has Lamar Jackson had in 6 years?
Like 4, 5. Yeah. That's your problem. They're so good that
you got a team full of all-stars. You've got a great, management team, the head coach, everything else. Your cancer is the OC because you can't keep one for long enough. That's your problem. That's what's stopping you from a title.
And then what's funny? I was talking about this. So going back to Spags. Spags has he ever been a head coach?
Rams.
Right, okay, and he didn't do a great job, right? It wasn't great. Yeah.
He stunk.
And he went back to the DC and he stayed there, right?
Yep.
He's won 4 Super Bowls, 3 with the Chiefs, 1 with the Giants?
2 with the Giants, I thought.
That was just 1. But either way, I think this whole thing, like what you were talking about with the OCs, I think there are too many examples of coordinators, whether they're offensive or defensive, that are great at their craft, going into the head coaching ranks and failing because now they have to manage everything instead of their focus. So they have to hire somebody who might not think the same way they do on that side of the ball, whether it's offense or defense, and they have to be able to manage all of these things. And now all of a sudden they're not so great. Right. Maybe you might just want to stay as an offensive coordinator and just do that. Ask Eric Bieniemy what he should have done.
I mean, better example, Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury, another great example.
Great offensive coordinator.
Great offensive coordinator, failed when he was the coach of the Cardinals.
Yep.
So I think there's something to be said about being content in that position versus the idea that we all have. It's just the corporate American idea. I want a promotion. I want a promotion every so often because that establishes my worth and shows that I have value. Maybe the value is in you being the best offensive coordinator ever or defensive coordinator ever, and that still might get you somewhere. Okay, head coaches get more of the accolade, but maybe that's not so bad. Maybe it's not so bad for your family either, because you lose a lot of family time being a coach in any professional sport. So then the head coach is even more so.
Historically, look at the Ryan family. You go back to Buddy Ryan. I mean, defensive genius, to say the least. Yeah.
That was my guy. Probably even more so than Ditka.
Yeah, as a head coach, And then obviously, you got his sons and Sexy Rexy and his feet fetish and all that,
That's hilarious.
But
no, okay. But again, Did they ever get to the pinnacle when they were the head coaches?
Right. That's true. Yep, that's the point. We'll see what happens with Mr. Kellen Moore if he takes the New Orleans job, like they're rumoring.
And again, so he goes from a team
Yep,
that wins
up
it all
here.
to a team. It's just like being a draft pick, right? You always have to go to the worst team because they're the ones who need you.
Yep.
Is that the best scenario for you to be successful? Everybody wants to be the guy who,
Yep.
built it from nothing.
Yep.
But maybe you built
Yeah.
a 2-bedroom flat instead of
Exactly.
a mansion, and that
Yep.
could happen.
Yep. It's very true.
So,
On that note, like we said, we know what we will talk about and what we won't talk about when it comes to football going into the 2025 season. But on that note, we'll pick back up maybe later this week and next week, and we'll talk NBA because now it's getting a little interesting with all the trade dynamics. We saw the introduction of Mr. Luka Doncic yesterday. Interesting little debut. They are a potential offensive firepower to be dealt with, but defensively, we'll see.
Score 130 and lose. How you know what Joe Burrow thinks about that? They scored a lot of points here and lost many games.
Yep.
So might not be the best fit.
Facts. But
right.
No, on that note, we will pick back up later this week or next week. We'll see you then. Be well.